For those of you that don't know me, as Susan nicely said, my name is Paul Medina. I have been making art for over 45 years. I consider myself uh, a self-taught mixed media artist. Um, I also work in series, meaning that I will go for 2 or 3 or 4 years doing certain kinds of imagery and using certain kinds of materials, variety of mixed media. And then I will get to a point where I want to shift and do something different. I like the challenge of trying to capture new imagery in new materials. I think that's what really kind of keeps me going as an artist. I really can appreciate uh, artists that find their vision and stay with it, but I've just never really been able to do that. To find a certain imagery that I want to stay with for really, for the rest of my life. And so I find that I really enjoy the struggle of working in new materials to try to capture the concepts that I want. There was a period of time where I was a gallery artist, meaning that the handbook at the time when I first started out, I felt like that there was a handbook, that there was a certain way to be an artist or to be a successful artist, and so I took that road. I started doing a lot of galleries. There was a period of time in the 80s, most of the 80s and the early 90s, where I was in many, many, many galleries across the United States. I was constantly on the road. And I was doing what I thought I should do, more of an emphasis on selling than trying to develop a reputation or an identity. And I did that for a long, long time, and I was fairly successful at it. But I just got to a point where it wasn't fulfilling for me. And so what I did is after many years of doing galleries, I decided that to do something very strange and very, risky. And I just basically pulled out of all of the galleries that I was in. I was in 6 galleries at the time, from Santa Barbara to Coconut Grove, Florida, and just decided that I was going to just kind of not take any shows, not do anything for a couple of years, and just experiment and come up with a new way that I wanted to live my artist life. I learned, it took me about a decade or so to realize there was more than just one way to be an artist. You had to fulfill yourself first before you could fulfill somebody else, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of me in a nutshell. I've done many, many one-man shows, a couple of museum shows. I still remain active, but my thrust is not to be doing many shows in many galleries. I take a couple of shows a year. Basically, that's about it. And I'm happy with that. I'm happy to be the type of artist, chose the direction that I took. Granted, I would love to sell more work like everybody does, but that has never really been my main thrust of being an artist, is to sell. Maybe it should, I don't know. But as it stands, that's how I've lived my life as an artist, probably since the mid-90s, early mid-90s. Let's talk about a little bit about this new series of work. I know some of you know this story, but I know a lot of you don't. The image that is on the screen right now, um, it is, I started a series called Roses and Thorns. Unfortunately for me, this stemmed from a lot of loss and a lot of grief. Within 2 years, I lost my younger brother, my mother, my father, and a very close cousin that was almost like my sister. And it kind of put me through a tailspin. Usually, when bad times come in my life, going to the studio is like the thing to do. But this time, I couldn't do that. It was about 3 or 4 or 5 months before I could even think about going back into the studio. I've dabbled in clay before, but it has been um, it has been a uh, it's been a just kind of a basic elements. The clay has always been just elements within a larger context of work. So this is really the second body of work that was basically in clay. Obviously, there's overtones of what you see these sculptures. They're about 25 inches in diameter, so they're rather large, not too large, but something that I can get into a kiln. I learned right off the bat in this period of time of grief is that obviously the thorns represents the agony and the sadness, but throughout all of this, I saw glimpses of beauty. I took care of my parents. I took care of my parents for a long time. And I don't know what this is. Oh, I see. And so I found that taking care of my older parents to their death, there was a beauty there. And so I tried to capture the sadness and the grief, and at the same time create some kind of beauty in the process. For those of you who know my work for a long time, George, I know you're here. We've talked about this, and that is you can see a strand of me in everything that I do, meaning, or I believe that. Always the same kind of iconic imagery in most of my work. So for the first period of time in this series of work, I was doing nothing but clay work. And so this is, I hope you can see that very well. I did a large, not large, but a medium-sized series of these roses in a box. These are individual clay, fired clay pieces that I put in boxes. They did rather, I mean, I actually put them out into the world and sold several of them. This is a kind of a really long piece here. Let me see if I can give you another one here. So anyway, so as I'm internalizing all of this stuff that's going on in my real life, I there we go. I tried to make sense of it as artists do. If I know a lot of you are artists, and we try to direct the things that are that's going on in our lives in the work that we do. So these are the first came the crowns of thorns, and the next came these boxes of roses. Here we go. That's the largest one I did. They're real heavy, and that's why I kind of stopped the boxes of roses. This is probably about 45 pounds. There's about 45 pounds of clay there, and I think that I got to the point of no return. I was afraid to get any bigger. I really wish that you could see these in person. There's a lot of, even though this is really light colored, which was on purpose, there's a lot of stains and a lot of glazes on these pieces. There's a lot of color going on in here that you really can't see, or I really can't see in these images. So I've got to do this, I'm sorry. So I started painting the roses. Come on, switch over, there we go. I did these clay works, and as the veil of extreme grief kind of lifted off of me, I wanted to do something a little bit more joyous than that. And same imagery, the roses. In fact, all of this work that I'm doing right now has the rose involved in it. This was literally the first piece that I did. It's actually a photo collage. I've taken photographs. I've done my own photography on this. Those are photographs of different roses that I've hand painted each rose, and I have collaged it on these mosaic backgrounds. This is what you're seeing here. So all of the green that you see here are strips of paper that I painted the paper and then cut them. So everything is really from scratch in that regard. Let me show you another one. This piece here that's coming up right now, I want to thank Susan for placing this for me. She sold this piece for me. Again, you can't really see what these look like in these, but each rose is completely painted. It's a photograph, but they're completely painted. And when you see them in person, these roses look like velvet. They just have this wonderful ambiance to them. And this was sold. This is a sold piece that Susan. In fact, it's the first piece of this rose series that I sold. Let me show you another one. There, I think that's in this piece right here is now in the gallery. There we go. This is 3 by 4 foot. As you can see in this one, I've started taking them kind of out of the realm of, like the first one was like cascades of roses. I started taking them on a little bit more contemporary bent here. I really like this piece. And again, as you all know, we all take photographs of our work, and it never captures what they really look like. But what do you do? This next one is really one of my favorites. If I can ever get it up. There we go. This is also 3 by 4. This one's a little bit more melancholy. Um, again, the same process. I got away from the mosaic look for a while, but I went back and forth. I did the plain backgrounds, and again, there's it's unfortunate that you can't see the real detail and the quality of the the velvet look. I don't know how I did it. I don't even know if I can duplicate it. It's, but the whole thing was about trying to make something beautiful out of something so very sad and something that changed my life. During this period of time, I became the oldest person in my family. So I think it has something to do with, I don't know, just making something beautiful. You know, when I was a young man, to hell with beauty. I wanted to set the world on fire. I wanted to do something cutting edge, that kind of thing. And as I gotten older, I realized that, you know, love and beauty, love and beauty are the most important things. This is one I don't think even Susan has seen. This is a large piece. It's 4 by 5. Again, a lot of glazes. This little piece. Again, they're becoming a little bit more contemporary, I think. This is taking longer and longer. There we go. And the next one is one of the last of the paintings that I did of roses. Again, a little bit more somber. I tell you, I really loved. I haven't really talked about the photography aspect of it. I'm not a photographer. I'm just an artist with a camera. But I really, you know, last summer when I was working on these and at the beginning, running around and into people's yards in the middle of the day, capturing and taking photographs of these roses were, that in itself was kind of fun, you know, seeing if I was going to get caught, you know, going up to people's front yard, you know, the porches and, you know, looking to make sure that somebody's not watching me and taking these photographs of the roses was really kind of fun. I liked it. This piece now, um, um, Susan has seen that, but I don't think anybody has seen this. This is a screen. It's a 3-panel screen. It's completely flat. It's about 6 foot by 4 foot. All collage work. I really love this piece. One of these days, I'm going to show it somewhere. But and the backside's kind of cool too. It's kind of a it's strictly a painted thorn motif. And then at the end of all of these paintings, and I'm only going to show one right now. I did a series of 6 paintings of my daughter. In the same kind of thing. I know that people, even Susan said something about it, that there was a real kind of Klimt quality to it. I can see that because of the treatment that I did with the clothes, but um, there I don't know why. I mean, just in the middle of these, first of all, I've got a beautiful daughter, and I hadn't done anything with her in a long time. Um, so out of all of the stream of work that I've done, um, I stopped to do these 6 pieces of with my daughter. Okay, now this is not a very good picture, but it's the first. It's the first of the totem series. This is rather why it's so small and dinky, and I had this professionally done. This is about 9 foot tall and about 2 foot across. And this one's called For My Mom. This was the one that I did for my mom. I tell you, I've worked in many mediums in different ways, but this is the first time I started trying to do something that really involves gravity, right? I literally spent a year off and on trying to figure out how to do this. Did I use stringing these things together? Did I use cord? Did I use ribbon? Did I, what was I going to do? I actually redid this about completely, not the elements, but the way it was put together 3 different times. And again, it's one of those ones that you have to see. It's rather imposing, but it's got all kinds of elements in it, a lot of thorns, a lot of roses, a lot of birds, that kind of thing. This was the second piece in this totem series. Again, this is all mixed media on fired clay. Lots of roses. And I want to apologize right off the bat before we go any further. A lot of these have not been professionally photographed yet. I haven't been able to get Anne in here because of the coronavirus, right? So I did the best I can. I went to the wall on this one. This one's about 5 by 5. This is when the whole totem series really started, coming together for me, making all of these elements. And if any of you have worked in clay before, you know how long of a process this is. I mean, I would make as many of these elements as I can, thinking that I would have enough. And I would get started, and like halfway through, I'd go, oh boy, I should have made twice as many things. So these things took forever to put together. I'm getting better at it, but at the time it was just, I'm making this stuff up. I mean, I've never done this before. And again, that goes back to what I said at the beginning. It's like, I love this. I love getting in here. And, now I'm dealing with gravity and balance and, literally, not just balance on a painting, that's one thing. But, the balance in space is, free form balance was very, very difficult for me. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Okay. This is the first. This is the direction I'm going in now. This is, I think this is brown icon. This is about 6 foot tall. these are these things are heavy. Again, they're fired clay, mixed media on fired clay. Something that you can't see, I think, in these bad photographs is that they are an extreme matte finish. They don't really shine much light. I mean, reflect much light. Again, the same, about 5 foot. So when you think in terms of the roses and thorn, crown of thorns, what I was doing here to what I'm doing there, obviously there's you can see the major switch of direction. That large piece in the center of this red piece is probably about 13 inches long. So that'll kind of give you an idea of how big this is. And I think I've got one more photograph. This is the last finish piece that I've done. This is where I'm at right now. I'm right now in the middle of doing a very large black piece like that. So I'm just in there playing, learning, experimenting, and kind of that's really how I have kind of lived my life, really, in that regard. I do have, now, of course, I haven't talked to Laura Warner about the Untitled show. I have a show scheduled in June of next year. I haven't talked to her about what's going to happen there, but not necessarily the paintings, but all of the clay work will be in the show. I'm wanting to have probably 4 or 5 large pieces. This is like almost 6 by 6 foot right here. And so my goal, and of course I've got a year to get, hopefully it'll happen. But I also talked to somebody in Tulsa who's interested in doing a show as well. So we'll just play it by ear here. Again, I would say, like I said a moment ago, yes, I want to show this work. And yes, I want to sell this work. I was talking to a couple of artist friends of mine not too long ago about one of the main differences between what I used to do as a gallery artist and what I do now is that one of the things I didn't like about being a gallery artist is that here you've got a show in June and you've got a show in November or what have you. And so you work towards that to get enough work for that show. And then you work towards doing this to do this show. I didn't like that because I felt like I had to just produce the stuff. Usually now I will work on a body of work and then try to get it show. Which means that sometimes the body of work will set in storage for 6 months to a year. But I'm okay with that. I like being able to go in and just really do what I want to do and experiment, because what I start out doing may change through all of that period of time. Um, and I like that. I really enjoy doing it that way, um, uh, because I feel less stressed, and that's I work better that way. I'm not one of these people that I work better when I have a goal. I've got to get this done at a certain time. I hate that, and I never have liked that. So I really kind of enjoy and like the idea of just doing it at my pace, and then when I get a body of work that I really really like, I will. And plus at the time I can get great imagery of it to actually sell a show somewhere. Susan, are we?
Would you be open to questions now or comments?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
Why don't you unshare your computer screen, and then we'll be able to see everyone, and you can unmute yourselves, or I can unmute you, whichever you prefer.
Did I do that right?
You sure did. Thank you, Paul. You sure did. So if you want to just raise your hand and I will recognize you. Okay, Marianne.
Well, hi, Paul. I just had a question about your paintings, because I noticed that on the background of your roses, that you always have certain shapes like circles or arcs or rectangles. And I wondered if they had any significance to you.
No. Well, I mean, it depends. No, they don't. I think that like, especially in the you only saw one work that had my daughter in it. The shapes that I used in her gown or her dress and everything. She actually has. She had a top on in the real photograph that kind of had that kind of look. And so I just kind of did that. And again, I can see the Klimt kind of look to it, and I decided to use it anyway. If you're gonna steal something, steal from somebody that you love, right? Yeah, it's now you ask a good point, because there's a lot of ambiguous imagery. I mean, just the rose and the thorn itself are symbols that go back probably thousands of years, and so I'm definitely prone to another thing that Susan and I have talked about a lot, and George Oswald, is my religious overtones. I'm not a believer. I do not, but I was raised Catholic, and I guess it's like, you can take the Catholic out of the church, but you can't take, but I tell you, I mean, some of the greatest works of art that I love are religious, is the religious icon, because they're so powerful. And I'm a non-believer, right? So I don't do it, truly, I really don't do it on purpose. And that's why I'm saying it's kind of those kinds of imagery. I mean, you look at the Crowns of Thorn sculpture, and yeah, that's crowns of thorns, but it also looks like a funereal wreath. It's so that you have these things that kind of run in, and I kind of like that.
Thank you.
Okay. Someone else. Helen.
Hi, Paul. I just want to ask you, working in 2D and 3D, do you find it very difficult to keep a balance, or do you find that you're working completely in 3D and you have to force yourself to do a painting.
No,
Or when you're painting, you have to keep painting because when you stop for three-dimensional work, it interrupts the flow. Or no?
no, I don't have a problem. It's for another thing that maybe some of you don't know, and I'm sure I developed an arts-based mentoring program for at-risk children, and I've been doing that for a long, long time, part-time now. But and one of the things that I've talked to kids about creativity and imagination, that you don't have a wellspring in you for just sculpture, and then you have another wellspring of creativity for writing. You got one, right? It's just how you interpret it at the time or how you feel at the time. But that's what I try to tell kids, is that, I like to draw. I don't want to paint, or what, you know what I'm getting at? I don't want to do this but it's all the same thing. I see it as all the same thing. And that's evident. And so here I'm doing these sculptural works, and then I just slide in, because I had some concepts of what I wanted to do with the painting. I slid into the painting. And then at one point in time, I slid back into sculpture. And when I went back into sculpture, they were a lot more contemporary. So I think that one feeds the other. I think. I mean, I don't. Your guess is as good as mine in that regard.
Elizabeth?
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Hi, I had a question. You described your reaction to some loss that you had, and that informed a whole new direction in your artwork. And I was just looking at your recent series, and I see there's a sculptural heart with the aorta coming out. I wonder if you have any sort of creative percolation in response to the pandemic. Will there be lungs as part of your
Maybe.
iconography?
It's really, I mean, it's so weird how it always amazes me how resilient I am, because I don't see myself as, this resilient kind of person. But here I went through 2 years of loss, and then my wife had kidney cancer, and we went through that. And then we thought, all right, smooth sailing, 2020, we're going to have it. And then this pandemic took place. And we're talking about it, to me anyway, this is how I see it, or what I try to do. I've always tried to work in my work in universal themes, and loss is one of those. And that's what this is kind of an extension of what, I had a lot of personal loss, but now there's a lot of loss going on. And even though through all of this, I wanted, even when I was in the depths of real despair, my main focus was to try to be positive and make beautiful things. That's how I was trying to capture some feelings and some thoughts, but at the same time, even in the worst period of time that I was going through, which was about a 6-month period of time, that, the good memories came in, and me feeling fortunate that I had these people in my life, those kinds of things. Those were the roses. Those were those roses that, so even at the very depths of what I was going through, that's what I was trying to convey, is that even though through these terrible, terrible times, there is beauty. And for me anyway. And here we're going through this pandemic. And yeah, I think that there's going to be an enormous, not just me, but across the board, this is going to shape, especially young artists. It's going to hopefully shape not necessarily the direction, but maybe the depth of what they produce, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Someone else?
Yeah, maybe some lungs though. Maybe some lungs. I like that.
Nathan? Nathan, unmute.
Hey,
Nathan?
Unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Okay.
hey, buddy.
The one thing that I've always admired about your work is that no matter what you do, there's Paul Medina in it. I can spot you a mile away, no matter what medium you're using. And I've tried to, when I talk to young artists, you know, I mean, I'm not the oldest artist in the world, but about developing your voice as an artist, you know, the few that I tried to mentor, and I'm guilty of it too, you know, when you repeat yourself. What is your advice for younger artists that are beginning to formulate a voice in a not even a style, but just a spirit, because you work in all these mediums, but somehow I know that it's you, and that's, you know, kind of the sign of a really good artist that's in tune with this craft. How do you convey that to the younger artists so that they can start, you know, being less literal and more thoughtful in their work and how they produce their work?
Well, I think that a lot of that comes with time to begin with, but style is not a voice, right? And that's why that's kind of what, you know, the history I was talking about of quitting the galleries and stuff like that. I was trying to develop a style, but somehow I got so involved in the style or doing this and selling and this kind of thing, because you have to have a certain, especially at the time, the galleries I was in, they pick you because you have a certain style that they think that they can push and they can sell. I was more interested in that than trying to find my own voice. There is a difference. A voice, you develop a language, certain imageries. I've got little things that I've done that have popped up, and the rose is one of them. A bowl is another one. Wings have been another. They have popped up in my life and in my artwork from the very, very beginning. I think for a young artist, I think it would be great. Do everything, try everything. You know, as I said a moment ago about my clumsy metaphor of having one wellspring of creativity. I think a lot of young people, well, first of all, young people steal from other people, which is normal. That's a normal thing. You steal until you feel a certain amount of confidence to try a little of this, try a little of that. But I think that do everything. You know, I remember having a conversation with, well, I won't mention his name, but he's a young artist and a very good artist. And I suggested that, and he worked in pen and ink, beautiful stuff. And I said, why don't you try to do some clay work, do some three-dimensional work? And he goes, well, I don't like that. And I said, trust me on this. You delve into clay, when you go back to your pen and ink, you will bring those experiences with you, you know? And I believe that every creative thing that you do, it's like a guitar player picking up licks on a guitar. You keep those things that you learn, that you pick up along the way. And even if you don't immediately use them, they will come out at certain times in your life. That's been my experience. So I believe that young artists should, yes, the idea of staying, not flit around too much. There's a difference between flitting, you know, I'm going to paint this way one day and I'm going to paint another thing that way. I guess that's okay when you're, the first 2 or 3 or 4 years of your life, but as an artist, and this is just my, I'm not this is just my opinion, right? But I think that try new things. Grab a hold of a theme that you really, really love, and explore it, not just in that pen and ink, but in clay, and in or writing, or interpretive dance. Try everything, and I think that's how you become a more well-rounded artist. Take a clay class. You may never use clay ever again in your life, but you will learn things, intuitive things, while you're there, that you will bring to whatever you do next. That would be my advice. Do everything, see everything.
Thank you, Paul. That's really inspiring. Someone else, Paul.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to see your work. I'm a musician and an artist both, and iteration is something I think about quite often. And there's and I look at your roses and your and other elements of what you're doing, but especially those roses that I see it. And I'm wondering about your experience of doing those iterations. For me, sometimes it's meditation, and sometimes it creates friction, and I'm just curious about what your experience of doing that is.
With the rose itself, or just in general?
Just the fact that of doing the iterations of different, in one painting you'll have 30 roses, and just what your experience of doing that is. Are you, by the time you're done at number 30, are you experiencing meditation, or are you experiencing
or frustration? Yeah. First of all, I was a musician and in bands for almost 20 years when I was a young man. Traveled all over the place, did a lot of recording, and so I was a really decent singer and songwriter, but I was a terrible guitar player. But yeah, so I have that experience that you have too. Let me answer this question this way, and that is, I'm almost 70. I've painted a lot of paintings, sculpted a lot of sculpture. I've done a lot of different creative things. And over the course of those 45 years or so, a lot of that has become intuitive. I know pretty much what I'm wanting to do when I set out to do something. And so it's easy for me to slip into this repetition. One of the things I don't like about clay is that there's a disconnect for a while. I make it, I'm in it, I love it, I do it, and then I have to take it somewhere and have it fired, and it's away from me for a while. And then I get it back, and then I get back into it. That's kind of a drag for me. But whether it's 30 or 40 or 50 roses, I know, well, let me put it this way. I think I know when to start and when to stop. I've done this stuff for so many years. It is really a lot, it's second nature. And I know that there's some artists in this group right here that knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so it's easy when I'm in there and I'm involved. It's the greatest thing, I mean, it just flows. There's no, now, is there frustration? Oh, absolutely. if the image I have in my head isn't quite exact. In fact, I'm working on something right now that I have almost completely painted this 7-foot by 4-foot painting completely 3 different times. So yes, there can be a certain amount of frustration there, but overall, it's where I want to be. Those moments where you're there, and so I guess to answer your question, I invite that. I even in times where it's going wrong. It's going wrong my way. And so that's that, I guess.
Thank
Well,
you.
very good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Can I say something?
Sure, sure.
Before we end this, I want to thank Mark and Susan for their technical support, because I'm an idiot when it comes to stuff like this. And so you seeing these slides and everything would not have happened if it had been up just to me. So I appreciate it.
Well, and I'm not the technical person, Mark is, so thank you, Mark. We have time maybe for one more question.
Sorry to interrupt. Just I forgot to mention one thing. I would love to see your work through video, the 3-dimensional work through video. You mentioned it didn't do a job. I mean, this is a great way to see it, but there's so many qualities that I think would come out of it through.
Oh yeah, I do have a few. I've taken some videos where I've just kind of touched them. I'm talking about the 3-dimensional stuff. I've kind of touched them a little bit, so they're just kind of swaying a little bit. Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe Susan, maybe we could work out something like that, and you can.
I'm sure we could. Sheridan, did you have a question?
I did. And again, it's going back to that rose and that symbolism of it. And I was touched by the paintings that you had with the circle and the roses. And there was this like subtle movement of them falling down to the bottom of the page or the bottom of the canvas. And could you tell me a little bit about that sense of subtle movement?
Well, thanks for picking up on that, because I tried to do that. That was something that intentionally that I think in a lot of ways, which, you know, this, I hope I'm not coming off as being so extremely morose, you know, but it's beauty fades. Things die. I wanted them to fall as if time was passing, and because time does pass, and sometimes passing is a good thing, you know, in that regard. You know, when not saying that when people that you love pass is good, but it's a matter of things constantly change, and that's a good thing. And so, yeah, the ones that are actually look like they're in free fall, is, I guess that's I mean, I did that on purpose, or, you know, I tried to convey that in those paintings. So yeah, but yeah, it's about change and loss, and, you know, one beautiful flower blooms and then another one dies. So it's one of those kind of things. I hope these maybe not now, because I know we're running out of time, but the idea of, I hope that these totems, because that's what the major content of this show is going to be. I hope it doesn't come off as, I don't know, sad, depressing. I mean, do they look depressing to you?
Oh,
No.
I'm talking about the clay pieces. I don't want people to come in and go, "Oh my God, what a downer! This is," you know, that's
Well,
I
you
think
can see.
the white ones have a sort of sense of renewal about them, actually, rather than being depressing.
that's what I want. That's what I want. Great, thank you. Thanks for the.
Helen, were you going to say something as well? Sorry.
I was about to say, is that me you talked to?
Yes, Helen.
All right. I was about to say that white one was very uplifting and about kind of, rebirth and renewal as well. But I can see one there behind you, Susan. That's definitely a Paul piece.
Yes.
It has to be. Yeah, I've been kind of eyeing it the whole time. It's beautiful.
Yeah, really exquisite. Well, Paul, we just thank you so much for your time today. We are going to share this publicly, but if anyone wants to be in contact with you, Paul, do you want to share your email address?
If it's about sales, you need to take care of that.
Right.
If they want to, just like I forgot his name, who wants the videos?
Paul. His name
Paul?
is.
Oh, well, good. Yeah, you can share my email, and maybe I can put some things together and send them to him if you want.
That would be great. That would be great. And you can contact us always through the website, and Meg was kind enough to put that information in the chat box. So you see that. And thank you, Mark, because Mark is helping us to put online exhibitions up on Artsy. So if you go to artsy.net now, you can go to Objets, Trouvé and see our first online exhibition called Figurations and other work that is being populated day by day. So I think, Josette, your pieces are up now as well. So excited about that. Next week, we're going to have Helen. Helen has agreed to be our presenter. So I'm excited about Helen joining us, and have a good week, everyone. And
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Well done, Paul. Well done.